When my wife called from a resort, I filed for divorce, took money from our account. The realization that my marriage was over didn't come as a single devastating blow. Instead, it arrived in pieces, a puzzle of betrayal I assembled one painful fragment at a time. It began with a notification from Chase. Withdrawal alert, $43,550. The sum was staggering, nearly half of our emergency fund, gone in a single transaction. I stared at my phone in our kitchen, still wearing my work clothes, tie loosened after a 12-hour day finalizing the Henderson hydroelectric project designs. I called Victoria immediately. My wife of 12 years was supposed to be enjoying a mental health retreat at the Sandpiper Resort in St. Lucia, a trip she'd insisted she desperately needed after I'd been working late for weeks. 3 rings, then her voicemail. I tried again. This time, she answered, ambient sounds of clinking, glasses and tropical music in the background. "James," she said, her voice slightly slurred. "I was just about to call you." "There's a massive withdrawal from our account," I said, keeping my voice level. "Nearly $50,000, Vic." A pause. Then, I needed it. For what? My stomach was already nodding. For a fresh start. Her voice became measured, rehearsed. "I've been thinking while I'm here. This isn't working anymore. Us, I mean." I sat down heavily at our kitchen island. "You're breaking up with me over the phone from a Caribbean resort?" "I've already spoken to an attorney," she continued, as if reading from notes. "The money is for legal fees and expenses." I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhaustion washing over me. "Is there someone else?" Her silence answered before her words did. "His name is Marcelo. We've been seeing each other for a while." No dramatic confession about filing for divorce. No bold declaration about a new life with her lover. Just this. A hesitant admission after getting caught moving money. It felt worse somehow. After hanging up, I wandered through our 2 large suburban home, trying to process what had happened. It wasn't until I opened the garage door that the second piece of the puzzle appeared. An empty space where my father's 1967 Mustang Shelby GT500 should have been. The vintage midnight blue muscle car, the last gift my father gave me before cancer took him 3 years ago, was gone. Updated. Thanks for all the supportive comments overnight. Several people asked if Victoria had shown signs before this. Looking back, there were dozens of red flags I ignored. The separate yoga retreats, mysterious girls' nights, password changes on her phone. When you're working 60-hour weeks, it's easy to miss what's right in front of you. Has anyone else been blindsided by betrayal they should have seen coming? My relationship with my father had been built in silence. Not the cold silence of distance, but the comfortable quiet of men who understood each other without words. Robert Sullivan had spent 30 years as chief mechanical engineer for Ford's testing division. He communicated through engines and blueprints more fluently than through conversations. The Shelby was his masterpiece, a vehicle he'd spent 20 years restoring piece by meticulous piece. Every Saturday of my childhood was spent in the garage, learning to respect metal and mechanics, watching his calloused hands treat each component with reverence. When the diagnosis came, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, he made only one significant change to his will. The Mustang would come to me, along with a handwritten maintenance journal he'd kept since 1978. On his deathbed, his voice rough from disuse, he said, "That car is your heritage, James. Not just metal and rubber, but something of me in it." Victoria had tolerated the car at first, even posed beside it for Instagram photos when we first married. But as years passed and her tastes grew more expensive, her contempt for the old gas guzzler taking up garage space became increasingly obvious. Still, I never imagined she'd touch it. Some boundaries seemed sacred, even in a failing marriage. That night, I searched our home office, finding Victoria's desk drawers partially emptied. Her passport was gone. So was the spare key to the Mustang I kept in a locked desk compartment, a compartment that had been forced open. The third piece of the puzzle appeared when I checked our home safe behind the bedroom painting. Empty. No car documentation. No title. No insurance papers. With shaking hands, I called our insurance company. "Mr. Sullivan," Brenda from Nationwide said cautiously. "Someone claiming to be your wife called about changing the policy on the Shelby 3 weeks ago. We explained that the vehicle is under a hereditary asset protection clause your father established, requiring your in-person verification for any changes." "And?" I asked, my mouth dry. She seemed upset but thanked us and hung up. "We tried calling you to verify but couldn't reach you." I'd been in Seattle that week, presenting at an environmental engineering conference with spotty reception. Another convenient absence. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay awake, cycling between disbelief, rage, and a hollow emptiness that felt like grief. By morning, I'd called in sick, the first time in 5 years, and begun searching for answers. Victoria's behavior had shifted subtly over the past year. She'd quit her marketing job after a disagreement with her boss, promising to start her own consultancy. That business never materialized, but her spending habits adapted as though it had. Designer clothes, luxury spa visits, a growing collection of status symbols that filled our house, but somehow never our lives. My attempts to discuss finances were met with accusations. I was controlling, didn't understand her worth, resented her freedom while I was stuck in my boring job. For peace, I'd often yielded, working overtime to keep up with the Amex bills that arrived with increasing regularity. In the cold light of morning, digging through credit card statements and text messages she'd forgotten to delete from our shared iPad, a pattern emerged. Yoga retreats that lasted days longer than scheduled, unexplained charges at hotels in the city where we lived, and most recently, messages to someone saved as M training about St. Lucia being just the beginning. All this time, I'd thought we were growing apart because of my work hours. Now I wondered if I'd buried myself in work to avoid seeing what was happening right in front of me. The fourth piece of the puzzle appeared in Victoria's desk drawer, a crumpled receipt from Executive Auto Transport dated 2 weeks earlier. I called them, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Yes, we picked up a vintage Mustang for delivery to Phoenix, the dispatcher confirmed after checking their records. Classic Car Emporium. The paperwork was all in order, signed by James Sullivan. My signature forged. I felt sick. What Victoria couldn't have known was that 6 months earlier, after noticing her increased interest in our finances and assets, I'd installed a tracking device in the Mustang. Not out of suspicion about the car specifically, just a general unease as Victoria's questions about our net worth became more frequent. The tracker was a small Apple AirTag, hidden beneath the driver's seat during a routine maintenance check I performed myself. I opened the Find My app with trembling fingers. The signal was active. The Mustang was currently in Phoenix, approximately 1,827 miles from where it should have been. My first instinct was to call the police immediately, but something stopped me. This wasn't just theft. It was layers of betrayal that required careful navigation. Instead, I called my cousin Michael, a detective with the Financial Crimes Division in Chicago. "Jesus, James," he said after I explained the situation. "This isn't just divorce territory. We're talking grand theft auto, fraud, forgery. What should I do?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. "Document everything. Then get the best divorce attorney you can afford. This needs to be handled carefully." That afternoon, I sat in Edward Coleman's office, a divorce attorney whose name had come up in conversations with colleagues who'd been through similar situations. Coleman's corner office overlooked the Chicago River, his demeanor serious but compassionate as I laid out the facts. "Your situation is unfortunately not as uncommon as you might think," Coleman said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "Though, the classic car element adds a unique twist." He studied me over his glasses. "Most people in your position would be falling apart right now." I almost laughed. "I'm not sure I'm holding together as well as it looks." That night, alone in our house, the magnitude of Victoria's betrayal finally hit me. I sat on our bedroom floor, back against the wall, and broke down completely. Ugly, wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. I'd lost my father, my marriage, and the one material connection to my dad I had, all within 3 years. The pain was physical, a vice grip around my chest so tight I thought I might be having a heart attack. For 2 days, I barely functioned, surviving, on coffee and whatever I could microwave between bouts of sleep and frantic research. I discovered Victoria had created a separate email account I'd never seen before, which she'd used to communicate with Classic Car Emporium. In those emails, she claimed to be selling the car on my behalf due to financial hardship. The unraveling continued as Coleman's team worked with my cousin Michael to build a case. The buyer in Phoenix, sensing something off about the too-good-to-be-true price of $60,000 for a car worth nearly 4 times that amount, had insisted on cash payments and minimal paperwork, unwittingly creating a paper trail that strengthened our case. Bank records showed Victoria had withdrawn $43,750 for what she claimed were attorney fees, then transferred the remaining $16,250 to a recently opened account under her maiden name, Victoria Kincaid. The account also showed multiple transfers to M. Rodriguez over the past 6 months, amounts ranging from $500 to $3,000, totaling nearly $30,000. "She's been planning this for at least half a year," Coleman noted during our follow-up meeting. "The good news is her planning was sloppy. The car theft alone is enough to trigger the infidelity and criminal misconduct clauses in your prenuptial agreement, a prenup I'd insisted on after watching my colleague's nasty divorce 3 years into my relationship with Victoria. She'd called me untrusting and unromantic, but eventually signed after I agreed to generous terms that would have given her substantial assets in a normal separation, terms that were now void due to her actions. Michael called a week after I'd discovered the theft. We've coordinated with Phoenix PD. They've located the vehicle at Classic Car Emporium and confirmed the seller wasn't you. The owner's cooperating now that he realizes he's purchased stolen property. What about Victoria? I asked, surprised by the hollowness in my voice. That's your call, James. We can move now while she's still overseas. Or wait until she returns, I finished, understanding the implicit option. I thought about it for a long moment. The hurt part of me wanted immediate justice, wanted her vacation ruined, wanted her detained by foreign authorities. But something deeper, something that perhaps my father would have respected, made the decision for me. Let her come home, I said finally. Let her see everything she's destroyed at once. Updated. I'm overwhelmed by the support here. Several people asked why I didn't confront Victoria immediately. Honestly, I was in shock. The first few days felt like moving underwater, every decision taking enormous mental effort. The most surprising thing was discovering her separate email account had been created over a year ago. Have any of you experienced that moment when you realize betrayal wasn't impulsive but calculated? The days before Victoria's scheduled return were a strange limbo. I fluctuated between emotional extremes, hours of numb productivity followed by moments where I'd find myself standing in the garage, staring at the empty space, gripped by a rage so intense, my vision blurred. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid our empty house. My colleagues noticed the change, the weight loss, the dark circles under my eyes, but attributed it to the Henderson project's deadline. Only my boss knew the truth, after I'd broken down during a private meeting when he'd mentioned taking time off to reconnect with family. Through it all, I maintained radio silence with Victoria, ignoring her increasingly frequent texts. James, I know you're upset about the money. Can we please talk when I get back? You're being childish ignoring me like this. I saw you tracked the car. It's not what you think. Each message revealed more about her character than she realized. Not once did she mention remorse. Not once did she acknowledge what the Mustang meant to me. Her concern was entirely self-centered, focused on how my reaction affected her plans. The recovery of the Mustang happened without my presence. Michael arranged for a specialized transport to retrieve it from Phoenix and deliver it directly to a secure storage facility rather than our home. Until the legal situation stabilizes, he explained. We don't want to risk her trying to move it again. Coleman's strategy was precise. Victoria would be served with divorce papers the moment she cleared customs, followed immediately by a notice of criminal charges being filed. All credit cards would be frozen simultaneously, and she would discover her secret account had been flagged for investigation. Is this vindictive? I asked Coleman during our final meeting before her return. He shook his head. This is protective. Every step is legally justified by her actions. I chose not to be present for her arrival. Instead, I took a personal day and drove to Lake Michigan in a rental car, finding a quiet spot overlooking the water. For hours, I sat watching the waves, trying to reconcile the woman I'd married with the one who could steal my father's legacy. The text from Coleman came at 4:23 p.m. Papers served. She's been advised of pending criminal charges and bail requirements. I imagined the scene. Victoria, tanned and refreshed from her resort stay, facing the consequences of her actions in the stark fluorescent lighting of O'Hare's arrivals terminal, the moment she would understand that her carefully constructed exit strategy had collapsed. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly she'd pivot to damage control. By 6 p.m. I'd received texts from 3 mutual friends asking if I was doing okay and suggesting I hear Victoria's side before making permanent decisions. She was already spinning a narrative. At 7:12 p.m., her first direct contact came through, a voicemail that started with tears and ended with a veiled threat. James, please, this is all a misunderstanding. I was going to surprise you. I was going to use the money to... Crying. Please call me back. If you go through with these ridiculous charges, people will hear things about our marriage you don't want public. By the 8th call, her tone had shifted entirely to accusation. You set me up. You knew I was unhappy and you trapped me. Everyone will know what kind of controlling, paranoid husband you really are. I forwarded each message to Coleman without response. The emotional whiplash was exactly what he'd predicted. First denial, then bargaining, followed by anger and threats when those tactics failed. That night, alone in the small apartment I'd rented near my office, I finally opened the maintenance journal my father had left with the car. Flipping through the pages of his precise handwriting, I found an entry from just months before his diagnosis. Replaced fuel injection system today. James helped. His attention to detail improves every year. When the time comes, he'll take care of this old girl better than I ever could. A good man knows what's worth preserving. I closed the book and wept. Not just for my father or the car, but for the life I'd thought I was building. For the years spent with someone who had seen my dedication as weakness and my loyalty as something to exploit. The legal proceedings moved forward with painful slowness. Nothing like the swift justice portrayed in movies. Victoria hired and fired 2 attorneys in the first month, each time delaying proceedings. Her initial strategy of painting me as controlling and paranoid gained little traction once the evidence was presented. Forged documents, the cash sale significantly below market value, the secret account, and the damning emails discussing how to get rid of the car without him noticing. Most revealing were her text exchanges with Marcelo Rodriguez. Not a yoga instructor as she'd implied, but a personal trainer with a history of dating wealthy, married women. Their conversations, subpoenaed as evidence, showed them planning weekend getaways during my business trips and laughing about using my father's car as their exit strategy fund. Marcelo disappeared from Victoria's life the moment her assets were frozen. His final message to her, entered into evidence during discovery, read, "This is getting too complicated. Call me when things settle down." 3 months into the legal battle, Victoria's attorney approached Coleman with a settlement offer. She would plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence and more favorable divorce terms. After consulting with me, Coleman declined. The evidence was overwhelming, and the hereditary protection clause on the Mustang made the theft particularly egregious. "She needs to face the consequences," I told Coleman, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Not out of vengeance, but because actions matter." The criminal trial was set for October, with the divorce proceedings to follow. Victoria made one last attempt at reconciliation, showing up at my office unannounced. Security called up, and against my better judgment, I agreed to speak with her in the lobby. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a simple blouse and pants, "James," she said, her voice catching. "I made a terrible mistake. I was unhappy, and I handled it all wrong." "Which part was the mistake?" I asked quietly. "The affair? Stealing my father's car? Forging my signature? Or just getting caught?" She flinched. "All of it. I didn't understand what the car meant to you." "That's exactly the problem, Victoria. After 12 years, you should have known exactly what it meant. Can we start over?" Her hand reached for mine, but I pulled back. "The charges could be dropped. We could try therapy. I've ended things with Marcelo. He wasn't who I thought he was." For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the connection we'd once had. Then I remembered the texts, the laughter at my expense, the calculated targeting of the one thing that mattered most to me. "No," I said simply. "Some things, once broken, can't be fixed." In September, Victoria accepted a plea deal, guilty to theft and forgery in exchange for dropping the fraud charges. She would serve 6 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 2 years of probation. The judge, noting the particularly personal nature of the theft, denied the defense's request for community service instead of incarceration. I attended the sentencing hearing, my only appearance during the entire legal process. When given the opportunity to address the court, Victoria turned toward me. "James, I'm truly sorry," she said, voice breaking. "I never understood what I was taking from you. Not just a car, but your connection to your father. If I could take it back." I nodded slightly but said nothing. The moment for words had long passed. The divorce was finalized a month later. Under the terms of our prenup's infidelity and criminal misconduct clauses, Victoria received only what she had brought into the marriage, which after 13 years of not working and spending lavishly, amounted to very little. I kept the house, but decided to sell it, unable to feel comfortable in spaces filled with memories of betrayal. I found a smaller place closer to the office with a secure garage for the Mustang, which had been returned to me after serving as evidence. The first weekend in my new home, I spent hours in the garage with my father's maintenance journal open, beside me, carefully checking every system just as he had taught me. The familiar smell of leather and motor oil brought back his voice, his presence, his wisdom about machines and men. "The value isn't in what something costs," he'd told me once, "but in what it costs you to lose it." Victoria's betrayal had cost me my marriage, my trust, and temporarily a piece of my father's legacy. But in losing those things, I'd gained something unexpected, clarity about what truly mattered and the strength to protect it. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, I'd take the Shelby for long drives along Lake Michigan, the windows down and the engine's rumble drowning out everything else. In those moments, with the open road ahead and nothing but possibility on the horizon, I can almost hear my father's voice above the V8's growl. "Keep moving forward, son. The road ahead is always clearer than the rearview mirror." Updated. It's been a year since everything happened. Many asked for closure on Victoria. She served 4 months and is now on probation, working at her sister's boutique in Michigan. The Mustang and I completed a cross-country drive to honor my dad's memory last month. For those wondering about my emotional state, healing takes time, but I'm in therapy and learning to trust again. Would you be able to open your heart to someone new after experiencing such a profound betrayal?